I started to make music for basically ego reasons. I think I wanted to be a musician. I wanted to look and feel like a musician. And I think you learn pretty quickly that that's a fleeting satisfaction. I've had moments where I go, okay, I did it. Cool. I get to tour and stuff, and that's amazing. I know that young me would be really happy with that. Unfortunately, I don't usually get to interface with young me.
Welcome to the Indie Pulse. We're here at Baker Falls. I'm Dorian, and I'm very happy to be here with Noah Prebish. How are you doing, Noah?
I'm great.
Did I say your name right?
You Noah Prebish, yeah.
Prebish, okay, perfect. Can you tell us a bit more about you and about your different projects? Because you do very different things here in New York, and I'd love to know more about it.
Yeah. My name's Noah Prebish. I play in a band called Psymon Spine. I'm also an illustrator, and I do a lot of show flyers and album art and merch and stuff, mostly for musicians. I also produce records for people. I also get hired sometimes by restaurants and hotels to make their playlists that play in the background. Sometimes I book. I do a bunch of, proper scrappy New York artist lifestyle, 700 jobs.
Yeah, I can see that. How do you manage all this? Like, are your days very similar? Do you organize them, or is it like very random, depending on the opportunities?
They're extremely inconsistent, and that's something that I'm always trying to work on. A lot of my work involves travel and tour and maintaining a nice work-life balance, and maintaining sort of some semblance of a routine is a big challenge. Something I'm working on all the time. I'm getting better at it.
Are you from New York, or did you come here someday?
I'm from upstate New York, the suburbs, and I moved to New York. I spent a couple summers here between college semesters making music. I was going to school upstate, and my band signed with a small label in the city. So we'd go for the summers to record and play shows, and then 2016 I moved for real and just been here ever since.
Was it already Psymon Spine, your band at the time? So how long has it been going on, the band?
So long. Since like 2012, I believe. The story is kind of interesting. I was in an electronic project with my best friend from high school named Michael, who's in Psymon Spine now. We got asked when I was like 18 to go on tour and do some shows in Europe. So I think a guy in Belgium hit us up and said, will you play a show? And then we put together this little tour. It was like 4 dates. And then Michael couldn't do it. He was going to school in LA. There was some other stuff happening. So I just met this guy, Peter, like a week before. And I said, will you go to Europe with me? Because I just liked him. I thought he was cool, and he said, yeah, okay. So we were doing this tour kind of for this other project. It was very Bloghouse, like...
Were you DJing mostly, or were you playing?
It was a live set with Ableton and synthesizers. Yeah, and then some DJ sets. But it was very, like trying to sound like Daft Punk,
I see.
Yeah, our favorite, trying to sound French. Yeah. And, yeah. And then anyway, we were like, we had days off. We would be hanging out in the hostel in Paris or whatever, and we started writing these new songs. We got back to school, and then Peter and I started this band called Psymon Spine. There's been like a million versions, different personnel changes, and then ultimately Michael, my best friend from high school, when he graduated school in LA, he moved back to the East Coast, and then he became part of the band as well. So it's been, since 2012. So like 13 years.
Has it been going on for all these 13 years? Did you do like some small like stops or?
There was a break. There was about a 2-year break at one point where we were not broken up, but we were focusing on other things, and it was really good for us.
And how would you describe your sound and how it evolved since 2012?
It started with that particular project. It was, we wanted to do everything. We wanted to do every single thing that we liked. We wanted to sound like every band we liked, regardless of genre, context, instrumentation. And I think that is still the case, but I think that we've made a concerted effort to consolidate so that it's a little easier to listen to.
To narrow down a bit the choices, kind of.
Yeah. I feel like it's gotten more organic over time. It's gotten funkier. It's gotten a little darker in some ways, although I think it's still pretty joyful music. Yeah, we're just, responding to what the world feels like when we're writing music. So it's a little, I think in some ways a little edgier than it used to be, but yeah.
And going back a little, what was your introduction to music?
My parents love music. They're not professional musicians. They're kind of hobbyists. But I grew up around it. I think, I took classical lessons. I played in the school band. I played trombone. I played piano, but I wasn't very good at either. And then when I was in 5th grade, I had a crush on a girl in my class who liked Green Day. So I said, I'm going to learn how to play guitar.
What album was it at that time? Do you remember?
That was American Idiot.
American Idiot,
So
yeah.
not even like cool early Green Day, but like full on.
I remember I was in high school at the same time when they were the biggest.
Yeah, I mean, it was like the most, that's probably, I'm loath to admit it, but it's probably the most important album of my life is American Idiot by Green Day in many ways. I think something else that happened, which was that when I was in 7th grade, I played trombone in the school band, and I poked my friend in the head with my trombone slide, and I got kicked out on the spot.
No way.
The conductor said, "Get out. You're not welcome back. You're making a mockery of this whole thing."
Was it on purpose?
Yeah, it wasn't malicious. He was my friend. It was we were goofing around, and I wasn't taking it seriously. And I was like, I mean, trombone is funny. Like, it's a funny instrument. It's supposed to be funny. So of course I'm not going to take it seriously. But she kicked me out, and then I was like, well, whatever, man. I'm going to just play guitar. And so it basically started in this extremely petty way. It's like to impress a girl and also to get back at this conductor who doesn't care if I live or die, and of course it turned into this deeply meaningful thing. But I think it's funny how it started in this really sort of shallow way.
Did you sing from the start, or were you just playing?
I tried to sing from the start. Singing is really hard for me. It's not something that comes naturally to me. I've worked really, really hard to get to where I am, and I still have a long way to go. I don't consider myself a singer.
That's super interesting. How do you work on singing on your voice?
I've tried a bunch of stuff. I've done voice lessons to mixed results. I've had great voice teachers. I've had voice teachers who really didn't get what I was trying to do or what I was capable of doing. And I think a lot of it has been psychological. I think singing is really, really vulnerable, and it's really embarrassing to feel like you're not delivering it how you want to, because it's so, it's vulnerable. It's embarrassing, and I've played a million shows where I sounded like shit. Can I swear? Is that okay? And at some point I just was like, I want to do this enough that it's okay, that it's a little embarrassing. And no. It's as I've relaxed into myself as I've gotten older. I think my voice has gotten better. It's still always a thing I'm thinking about. Hitting those notes, it's not easy for me.
I totally understand. And from that point of like playing the guitar and learning how to sing, how did you get into more composing and producing?
That's a really good question. I feel like there were so many little phases of my life that were overlapping where I needed certain skills for some really specific thing. A lot of it was like learning production skills because I didn't have a producer to work with. So I was learning how to do it myself, or, I would have a friend's band. There was a band that I was friends with in college who needed someone to make their music sound interesting. And I didn't know anything about the technical side of it, but I had an idea about, I said, like, this kind of reminds me of this band, so I was listening and trying to puzzle it out. And, and in high school I had messed around a bit with production. I mean, I think honestly a huge, huge factor for me. Actually, I'm forgetting a whole really important thing, which was this band I mentioned that I had in high school, which was this electronic thing, which was we were into Justice and Daft Punk and Ed Banger.
You were saying you were using Ableton Live on stage, so you were
Yeah.
already using this kind of
Yes.
software, I
Yes.
guess.
Yes.
Did you stick with Ableton, or did you
Yeah,
move to...
I'm still an Ableton guy. Even when I produce like folk records for people, I'm still using Ableton. It's like a, another arm for me now. I'm really comfortable in it.
That's interesting, because sometimes when we talk to artists who are not in the electronic field, or only in the electronic field, they don't use Ableton. But I've talked to a few artists who are like, I still use Ableton, I'm used to it, and I use it for very organic or rock thing, so it works right?
It's just like a language I speak. It's something I don't need to think about because I've done it for so long. It was really challenging. But yeah, so I had this band. I like almost completely forgot about this, but I had this band with Michael, who's still my bandmate. And we made electronic music. We tried to teach ourselves to sound like, Cassius and, and all of these French artists that we loved. And, to mix success, I think Michael was a lot better at it than I was at the time. And he taught me a lot, still teaches me a lot. And then, as time went on, I found myself in situations where someone I was around needed someone to help them make something sound a little more interesting. Usually I wasn't getting hired because they needed it to sound more professional. It was like I would get brought in because they wanted it to sound weirder and they wanted, Anyway, now I like to think that I can do both, make it sound clean and professional, but I do think that I'm brought in normally to produce records because they like the weird sounds I get.
It's interesting because it's not all artists who start producing for others, but from the start you're saying that you produced your own music, but you also worked with other artists. From the start, was it that way, or?
Yes, sort of. I started working, I think in college I produced my first like 2 songs for someone else. And I wasn't really very serious. It wasn't like this is going to be my career move. It just sort of fell into my lap and I did it and I really liked it. When I was, when we first signed to this label in New York, we worked with a producer, this guy, Graham Dixon. He's in a band called Crystal Fighters. And he had started this record label. He produced a record for us and I was watching him work and go like, okay, that's really interesting. And then around 2017, I was asked to join this band called Barry, which is kind of like an indie pop band. Well, it was we sort of started it all together. It was like her manager knew me and knew my friend Spurge, and he said, I'm managing this singer. She's going to move to New York from Boston. I want to put a band together for her. So we did that, and I started to help produce some of those songs, especially the early ones. And that was a big, I learned really quickly producing that music.
Do you remember the first track you finished and recorded and wanted to release?
Yeah, I think it was this song that I made in high school that had I made it in Logic. I was learning how to use Logic for a class. And it had samples of MIA and it had samples of, I think Ken Kesey or one of those LSD guys, and it was pretty corny. It was pretty corny. I think I unfortunately think I took it down, but I kind of wish I could find it. I might try to find it. It's bad, but it's cool, It's cool that it's bad. It's fun.
How was you first set up? Was it fully on Ableton with samples, as you were saying? Were you already using other instruments?
That first one was at my high school. There was a music tech lab. So there's a MIDI keyboard and a computer, and that was all. Then when I started doing this project with Michael, we started recording synths. Again, he was a little ahead of me. He was kind of my mentor. Then we used Reason for a little while, actually. I think when we were in that band, I think we were using Reason, which is a crazy program. I don't know if you've used it.
I haven't, but I've heard about it.
It's crazy. And then ultimately moved over to Ableton. Yeah, in the beginning it was all pretty in the box, and then slowly I would expand to, buy a synth or whatever. I had this setup in my parents' basement when I was in high school, where it was like a folding table, and I had CDJ 200s. So no screen, I think, and only CD. Like, I think they only actually took CDs.
CDs, yeah.
Yeah. We had this shitty old mixer, 2-channel DJ mixer that was like 80s Miami colors. It was like a purple to blue gradient. We called it Old Breezy. It would like crackle, and then we had a Korg R3 that was Michael's old synth, and we had like a micro Korg, and I'd play a drum loop on the CDJ, or maybe 2 drum loops, and then we would all sort of gather downstairs, and we'd have like one of us would be playing, one of my friends would be on one of the synths, someone on the other synth. I think maybe at some point someone would play guitar over it too. Yeah, so we'd have like these jams in my
Super
basement.
interesting. So very organic way to create melodies or arrangements, right?
Yeah, and I don't even really think we ever recorded anything, but we would do this, and it was my first version of a studio. It was my first version, plugging this thing into this thing, and how can I sync up the tempos, and how can I, have an arpeggio running on the Korg and have it match up with this CDJ that barely functioned. It was really cool. It was really cool. I think we were really creative at that time.
And did you already incorporate your own vocals, or you said samples, but were you already like singing and recording your voice, or?
Not in that band. I had another band in high school that I've also forgotten to mention. That was kind of like an indie rock band, and I did sing in that band. And we did record and release some stuff. Very, low key, like on Bandcamp. And I'm not sure I'm going to say what it's called because I'm not sure I'm ready.
It's possibly still on it.
I actually believe it is.
So maybe people will find it. We'll see. We'll see. Can you tell us a bit about like 1, 2, or maybe like 3 small like moments where you thought about, okay, I should stop or quit, or you felt like this was not going anywhere?
Those moments happen all the time. I just had a pretty major change in my work life, where I went like, man, I really, it would be so nice to have a more stable source of income. I think it's hard when you love making so much. I think most of us can relate to that. I have so much admiration and respect for people who have a real day job and are able to find the time and willpower to make art outside of that. I also have a lot of compassion for people who have a day job and don't have the energy and are just trying to figure out how they're gonna get to it. For whatever reason, I've been lucky enough to make ends meet in this scrappy way, with different pieces. But yeah, I don't know. I've had jobs fall through. When I was in this band Barry, we were on tour, and someone reached out to me about this job that was really cool. It was like, would have been running Ableton for this experimental theater company, something I would have loved to have gotten involved in, and I couldn't go to the interview because I was on tour. And ultimately I quit that band, and I went like, wow, I probably should have made sure I was at that interview because, other moments, I mean, I've played horrible shows to no one, or even worse, horrible shows to lots of people, and thought, this isn't working. Like, why are we trying to force this? I've had jobs fall through. I've done remixes for people that I loved that never came out. I think failure becomes part of the backdrop, and it's what makes the successes feel so sweet.
And you said sometimes you had bad shows, so possibly sometimes when you start a show and you see it's not going well, it's not going in the right direction, how do you face it? Do you try to make it right, or do you just like say, okay, let's survive until the end of the set?
We laugh about it, with Psymon Spine, I'm lucky. We have we're all good at laughing at ourselves. We don't take ourselves very seriously, and the more shows you play, the lower percentage of your music career is represented by one shitty show. You know, there's naturally it just gets easier. It gets easier. And yeah, and there are shows where you just go like, I just need to finish this show. And we're just going to play the songs and get through it. And I'm not going to think too hard about it because I know I'll spiral. But I also think some of those shows are really important. I think they make us better musicians. In a lot of cases, the thing that makes a show a bad show is really ethereal. And it can change throughout the show. I've had ones that started really good, and at the end we all felt bad, and it's hard to put your finger on why you feel bad. You can play a show that feels really good to 3 people, and we've had that happen. We played in Hamburg to probably 8 people, and it was one of my favorite shows because there is this intangible energy that just felt really nice. We all were in a really good mood, and everything sounded pleasing. And you know, and likewise, we'll have shows where everything is set up perfectly and the vibe is just a little weird and we're all in our heads and we can't relax, you know. It's rare that we leave and go like, that show was fucking awful. Usually it's like, okay, I think we did our best given the circumstances.
And do you feel you've always had this kind of like, okay, sometimes it's out of your control vibe, or is it something you learned over time?
That's a good question. The irony is I have more control than I used to. You know, I think when you start, the default is most of your shows are bad. And then you get up to like, okay, now maybe 30% of our shows are good. And then, you know, or 30% of the show is good and 70%, you know what I mean? Like, it's yes. Like, yeah, I think there was a shift. I think I was extremely motivated and aspirational when I was younger. So the embarrassment that I felt when we'd have a show that felt bad or felt like it didn't come together was overshadowed by my extreme desire to live the life of a musician, to go on tour, to express myself in this way. And then as I've gotten older, it's shifted a little bit to where I have a much more open-minded idea about what my life in music and art could look like and does look like. And because of that, it's only one part of me. If we play a really bad show, I don't feel that my life is in shambles. I feel like, okay, that this area is incongruent right now. Something is happening in this area of my life that's stuck. So I'm going to focus maybe on other stuff for a little while. Or if it's the middle of a tour, we just push through it and hope the next show's better.
Being an artist is also a roller coaster of emotions and moments and opportunities you get or you miss and everything. Can you tell us about like what you would say was the biggest roller coaster you get?
Psymon Spine has always been a fairly stable, sustainable path. We've kind of grown in this pretty solid trajectory way where we've never had a big flash in the pan. We never had a big hit. It's always been like each record, there's a few more people that show up at the shows. That's great. When I played in this other band, Barry, we started doing really well really quickly. And I had never experienced that before. Just, you know, well in the metrics of modern music, like good streaming numbers and getting put on cool festivals that I had always wanted to play and stuff. But something was really off in that group. I loved the people I was playing with, but we were headed quickly in different directions. And it was an interesting moment to say like, okay, I'm getting to do all of these things I want to do, but I'm not creatively fulfilled. And therefore I can't really taste the feast that has been prepared for me. There's something really weird about playing a stage that you maybe always wanted to play and being like, I don't really feel anything here because this doesn't really feel quite like me. And that's not to say I got so much out of that experience, and a lot of it was extremely creative, but I would say that there was a really exciting arc of this is happening, this might be our careers, and then a slow dawning realization that it wasn't actually going to be the rest of our lives, that it was just a moment in my life. And that was really sad. It was really sad because I had to it was like ending a relationship. We also broke up on tour in Europe at the beginning. Like I think the first night of our tour,
Okay.
the band broke up. So we said we'll finish the tour. And
Okay,
then when
you
we get
finished the
back,
tour.
We finished the tour. It ended up being really fun because we didn't really.
Because every show was kind of one of the last ones, I guess.
Yeah, and it's not even. I'm not a very sentimental person in that way. I don't like long drawn out goodbyes. But there was this feeling. My bandmates Spurge and Sabine and I we all left at the same time, and we were really on the same team. We all really agreed. We left at the same time. We were on each other's team, and we were just having an amazing time in Europe. We were kind of like, whatever happens, we'd sound check, then we'd leave and we'd go have fun, and then we'd come back, and it just didn't matter if the show sucked. It didn't feel that bad to us, and that was kind of freeing. Yeah.
And about this part, about feeling something on stage or not, we also received on the podcast an artist called LeBron, and he was telling us that when he's DJing, he's like so into it, so focused on it, he actually doesn't feel anything or doesn't possibly enjoy the process, which is weird because when you see it, you feel like he's enjoying it and he loves it and he can go for hours.
Yeah.
But so it's a strange thing, and I would love to touch upon that to see what you think about that.
I love that you brought that up. It changes so much. I'm always wanting to feel more when I'm on stage. I think a lot of times you get caught up in practicalities. You go like, is my guitar, when I turn this pedal on at the end of the second verse, is it going to be too loud? Or did the synth in my monitor just jump up a lot? Is that because something, and we're all managing the group as a whole. All of us are sort of musical directing each other at the same time. And it's the same when I DJ. There's just... The truth is that I think if the sound is really good, usually I can lose myself and trust, and then I can really have fun and enjoy myself. It's hard when the sound is rough. It's hard for me to get into it. And then there are times when the sound is bad, and maybe if I meditate before the show or something, sometimes I can get to a good place. I've also had shows that sounded good, and I was just in my head for whatever reason. But when the sound is really good, we've played shows that were high stakes for us, where I felt extremely relaxed because the sound was really dialed. We got to play with Hot Chip, one of my favorite bands of all time.
Amazing, yeah.
In London, and it was the biggest venue we'd ever played. And I didn't feel nervous at all on stage. It was like one of the freest I had moments of my performing career because of everything was so pro, everything. I was like, if I fall, I will be,
someone will catch
caught.
you.
Exactly. Yeah. So that was really cool.
You also an artist, you're also an illustrator. You also do like graphic. How did you get to that part? Was it always part of your life, or did you get into it after some time? Can you tell us a bit more about that activity of yours?
Yeah. When I was a kid, I doodled constantly. I drew all the time. Again, I don't think I was like particularly good at it, but I loved it. I loved comic books and stuff. And I would draw all the time, make these little comics and stuff. I was never paying attention in class. I was doodling around, on my notes. And at some point, my life veered quickly into music. I had this like intense drive to pursue music, and I had never abandoned it completely, but I didn't study it. I didn't do very much to nurture it. So I felt pretty stagnant for a long time with illustration stuff. And at some point I started to think about the fact that was sort of my first love before music was illustration. When I was a kid, I wanted to be a cartoonist. That was like my dream before I discovered music. And so Spurge, who's one of my best friends, he was my bandmate in Barry. We also worked at the Lot Radio together. We also worked at Captured Tracks together. We've had a million jobs and a million projects together. He, would hear me talk about drawing and would see me doodle in my notebook and not really do anything with it. And he gave me this amazing gift, which was he had this series of DJ mixes that he had been putting together, curating. And he was like, I want you to do the artwork for all of them. And that was really, really important because it was the first time since I'd been a kid that I had homework and I had deadlines.
Interesting.
And that changed everything because as soon as I started doing that, I started advancing much more quickly than I had, in the past 20, 25 years. And that was really meaningful also because, we were working, the people doing these mixes were all people in our music scene, people that I knew or that Spurge knew. And so from there, pretty quickly, people started to say, oh, I liked this one you did. Could you do a flyer or whatever? And then, it's just picked up sort of organically from there, mostly for musicians, which is cool. It's like, it's all my music connections kind of coming full circle.
Yeah, everything seems linked. You mentioned having a few jobs at Capture Tracks and other like music companies, I guess. What were you doing for these companies?
I just worked at the record store, which is now I think just Captured Record Shop or something, Captured Records. The guy who started the label also started this record store. I worked there for a while. My first really important job in New York was at the Lot Radio, where I was a barista and a bartender and like a team member. You would also kind of manage the radio when you were there. I would DJ sometimes. Spurge and I would sometimes do these back-to-back sets where one of us would be making espresso and the other one would be
very
playing
fun
records,
Love it.
Yeah, it was fun. That was really, really key. My job before that was at Roberta's, the pizza place, and I hated it. I was so bad at that job. And all my coworkers were always mad at me. And I was like, yeah, I get why you guys are mad at me. I fucking
You can't
hate
be
this
good
job.
at everything, in like culinary stuff, maybe not.
It's so that I love food so much. I love cooking. Kitchen environment, it's the scariest place in the world to me. I cannot. The vibes there to me are crazy, and I think it's so cool. I think cooks, I think chefs, I think waiter, servers. I think it's so badass and so impressive. But I was immediately like chewed up and spat out. I was like, I'm too sensitive for this shit. I never know. People do this thing where they're like chopping something and they say like, can you grab that thing? And they don't look at you because they're busy. And I'd be like, are you talking to me? I don't fucking, and I was just always like, and I, oh my God, this one time I made a whole batch of coffee and I left, there's this lid. When you make like an industrial vat of drip coffee, there's this lid that keeps the heat in, but you have to put the lid down before you brew the coffee or else it spills over the lid and just all on the floor. And I like flooded the kitchen of Roberta's with like just gallons and gallons of coffee. It was so bad. I hated it there. But what I would do is after I put my 2 weeks in, I started just inventing pizza flavors that weren't real, and I would like I'd draw a diagram of it and like post it on paper plates throughout the takeout and delivery area. Anyway, the people I worked with were really cool. I ended up being buddies with a lot of them, but they scared the shit out of me when I was working there. I thought they were so intimidating.
How would you define like how you balance between making and creating music and the part where you seem to listen to a lot of music and create it, also maybe play it as a DJ?
Actually, something that's sort of interesting about that is that got easier when I started illustrating more, because when I'm making music, I can't listen to music. That sucks. That always really bothered me. I was like, I'm not actually listening to that much music because I'm producing music. I can't listen to something else while I'm producing or while I'm practicing or while I'm writing. That always really bothered me. And then I would get booked for DJ sets and I'd be like, I haven't listened to music in months. Like, I don't know what to play because I haven't found anything new. When I was at the Lot, it was easy because the best DJs in the world were coming in, sometimes 8 of them a day, and I would go in and be like, what's this record? And that made it really easy. And working at the record store also, I'd discover new stuff, But when I started illustrating, it was sort of the one work that I could do with music playing in the background. So now I'm really like, I'll always have NTS on or something, or one of my friends' shows on the Lot. And when I started getting involved in like curating music for restaurants and hotels and stuff, that also changed how I started being a bit more of an active listener. It's all connected, you know. It's all connected. The music that I make is extremely. I don't. Derivative sounds like a negative word. I mean, it is a negative word, but it's true. It's my music is derivative. I have music that I love and worship, and I'm always chasing that.
That makes sense as well. Like David Bowie was saying, he was a collector, and everyone was seeing him as the person who was inventing everything he was doing. So it makes sense that collecting and creating and listening to music is also what drives you to your sound. I have one question about that: is when you're creating or making music, do you always know in what direction you want to go, what sound you want to go to, or are you sometimes surprised by what you're doing?
I'm always surprised by where it ends up. I would say half or more of the time I have a thing I'm trying to do, and I almost always fail to do that and end up somewhere else. And I think that's the beauty. I think that's where the magic happens. It's creating is a collaboration between you and your own shortcomings. It's a collaboration between your aspirations and your failures. So when I hear, you know, like I love Can, the band, and I will never be able to sound like Can because they were, I forget exactly the whole, you know, they used to live in a castle and practice for 9 hours a day. Like they were just, and they lived in Germany, and it was, you know, it was a different decade. There's so much about it that is the context, the talent, everything that they had is so different from where I'm coming from. And then I hear the song, like I Want More by Can. That's a perfect song. And I'm like, I want to make something that makes me feel how that song made me feel. And I will not be able to recreate it even if I try. And the result is I end up somewhere else, sometimes something that doesn't even feel, you know, sometimes I haven't even succeeded in making something that feels like that thing. But then I've just made a song. And as long as I made a song, I'm good. You know, I'm happy. And yeah, I think I sort of feel sorry in a way for those who are so talented that they can perfectly recreate. You know, I think we all know artists who make music that is intensely derivative and, you know, meant to sound like a certain artist, and they succeed at it. They succeed at sounding like that artist. I think that is a little bit of a curse. I think that probably is really challenging. It's not a challenge I've particularly had to face because I've never been that good at, you know, at like making music in that way. I have a lot of love for people who are so good at music that they have to create tricks, you know, to not sound like music that already exists.
I have a question about the entourage, like people around you. How do you surround yourself with other people? Could be like band members, do you have a manager? Do you have people that work with you? And what are you looking for in people that work with you?
I just like being around nice people. I'm a really sensitive person, and I love people. I love having lots and lots of friends. I don't have a manager right now. I did. He recently retired. The guy who was managing, this guy Ron Spindler, was the manager of Psymon Spine for many, many years. Love him. He's, bless his heart, he's retired from music. He's a therapist. He's becoming a therapist. It's awesome.
It's very close. Like being a manager sometimes
it's
being
really
the
not so
therapist for
different.
artists.
It's really not so different. Yeah, right now, you know, my social circles are based around just friendship connections and then people who reach out and want to work with me. I don't know. It's there's sort of a natural flow to it. Did that answer your question?
It does. I was going to ask, like, how do you decide how you trust someone to work with you?
I love talented people, but I really love open people. I like creative people and I like kind people. Talent is secondary to that for me. And I'm lucky that I get people who are all of those things. I get to work with tons and tons of talented people, but I'm rarely sort of sourcing them. Like I'm rarely looking around and being like, that's the best drummer I've ever heard. I need them. I don't care what's going on with them. I'm usually more concerned with how does it feel when we hang out, because I know that I'll get the best work out of myself if I feel at ease. And again, like I said, like, you know, the drummer in Psymon Spine happens to be one of the best drummers I've ever met and also is a wonderful friend, you know. But yeah, I lead with friendship before the other stuff. I guess I feel like we can always get there together if the vibes are good. Yeah, I don't really work with people that I'm uncomfortable around, or if I do, it's short lived.
Makes sense. Did you end up making friends with some of your fans, or people who loved your music and discovered you through your music?
Yeah, a couple. I think it's really powerful when somebody sees you in the music. Psymon Spine is really personal, the songs are very personal. So yeah, I have had moments where people have come up to me after a show and we chat about the music, and it's turned into a real friendship. I have a friend named Mako who lives in Chicago, and they hit us up when we were coming to town for a show, and they were like, I do tattoos. Do you want to stick and poke? And I said, yeah, I'm down. And then we ended up chatting, and that was, I don't know how they had heard of our band, and they were in DC that night for some reason, but yeah, sometimes it does turn into meaningful friendships. I wouldn't say it's normally how I start friendships, but there have been moments, yeah.
Do you remember sometime when someone said something about your music to you and it really moved you?
Yes. Most of those experiences have been through my younger sister. I have a sister who's 5 years younger than me, Miya. We call her Yams. And she's, like one of my best friends in the world. And she hears things in my lyrics that I don't necessarily realize are there, because we had a very similar childhood under the same parents, same household. She's my favorite person to talk about my music with, because yeah, she gets it on this other level. And I think when I'm writing lyrics, a lot of times I'm writing in this way where it's sort of about the syllables sounding good. It's kind of, a lot of times the way I write is aesthetic first. I try to find words that feel good and then look for the meaning in what maybe looks like nonsense at first. It's not always the case, but that's usually how I work. Make a mumble track, which is gibberish. Then I fill in those spaces. And what I find is that I end up making kind of a more honest piece of work that way, because I'm sort of tapping into my subconscious. And yeah, it's really, I really like when someone analyzes my lyrics and tells me what they think they mean. Sometimes I go, oh yeah, well, I guess that is what it means. I don't know.
And do you write your lyrics completely like separately from your melodies and then you match them up? Or do you start with the melody? Do you start with lyrics?
Usually I start with the melody, but I will be like listening to music or walking around the city or doing something else, and I'll have a line pop into my head that feels like a really good line. And then I'll write that down. And then at some point I'll be like, is this the song where I use that line? It doesn't work that often, but when it does, it's a great feeling. Yeah.
Do you write them on like your phone, or do you have like a notebook? Or
yeah, usually just in my notes app on my phone. Yeah.
So you've been playing music for a very long time. Psymon Spine has been going on since 2012, you said. You've done like some awesome like things and created great music and everything. Did you ever feel imposter syndrome?
Constantly, yeah. Imposter syndrome, I would say, is my default, and then I have moments where I am free from it briefly, usually following a project that went really well, or maybe I'll make something and experience a lot of validation from one thing I did that will last me for a little while. But even that's a trap, because then the next time you go, am I going to be able to do this again? This person wants to hire me again. What if they liked the first one, but they don't like the second one? I feel imposter syndrome constantly. I think it's, I have one of my mom's friends. I was chatting with my mom, and she said she had a conversation with her friend, and she had to explain imposter syndrome because her friend had never heard of it, and she couldn't relate to it at all. And I thought, whoa, that's crazy. It didn't even occur to me that someone could experience life without some level of imposter syndrome. I don't know if it's such a bad thing. I mean, it's an interesting one. I think that wanting to make it as an artist does involve some level of delusion, because it's such a hard life. You know, you have to feel on some level like there's something special about you. Or in some cases, you have to have made the decision when you were kind of young and maybe naive, and then, you know, so that by the time you're older and worried about money and stability, you already have these sort of forces at play that are pushing you. But I experience imposter syndrome nearly every day.
And is it what keeps you going to have this strong desire to be an artist since you were little? Or do you feel it's like the strong driver? Do you have other drivers that keep you going when you're feeling it?
I think it's changed. I think that I started to make music for basically ego reasons. I think I wanted to be a musician. I wanted to look and feel like a musician. And I think you learn pretty quickly that that's a fleeting satisfaction. I've had moments where I go, okay, I did it. Cool. I get to tour and stuff, and that's amazing. I know that young me would be really happy with that. Unfortunately, I don't usually get to interface with young me, 15-year-old Noah. I try to when I meditate, I try to like say like, hey buddy, look, we did it. But the truth is now it's about people. It was about me, and now it's about other people, and just in that I have these communities now. And when I'm working on something, it's always for the people around me. It's always for the people closest to me so that they'll think it's cool. Yeah, I don't know. I think that at this point, my life in music is about community and friendship and trying to create a life for myself that's sustainable and as stress-free as possible. And that means one of the big things is when I was a kid, I had a really specific idea of what that meant. And that meant being in a band that was famous. And then when I experienced how hard touring is, I went like, I actually don't know if that's like what I want to be doing my entire life. I don't know if I want that to be my sole source of income. And that was really powerful because it sort of freed me from when there's only one thing that you want to do. It's powerful. It's a powerful driver, but it's really scary, because I don't want to feel like a failure if things pan out differently, or if there's maybe something that I would have enjoyed more or been better at. So now I'm doing everything that I want to be doing in my life. My only goals are fiscal at this point, basically, and of course, just I want to get better at everything. I want to keep improving. I don't think I'm like the finished version of myself, but I'm already getting to do the sorts of projects that I always wanted to do. And so now it's just finding stability.
I'm curious if you had a new track by Psymon Spine that was really like popping up and like being very, very successful, and you started getting, I don't know, booked on tours and places you've never played and going like full on that, like would you go for it? Or would you like consider staying in that more stable, like community driven state?
I would definitely be considering what it meant. I think I would certainly pursue it for a little while, with the understanding that those moments are usually short-lived and they're important experiences when they happen. There's still a lot of stuff I'd like to do that's just literal. Like I'd like to tour Asia, I'd like to tour Australia. I'd like to go to Africa. There's like continents that I haven't gotten to play in that I'd like to play in. But yeah, if someone said you're going to be on tour every month of the next year, yeah, I would have to do some real soul searching. I also have really bad back problems. Like today, my back sucks. Some days I wake up and it's because I got rear-ended on the freeway in LA 2.5, 3 years ago. And so that's a big thing. Like touring is kind of hard now because some days I'll wake up and I'll go like, it hurts just to stand up, and again, I'm lucky it's not all the time, but yeah, it would be an interesting predicament.
it's an interesting thing because as a musician and dreaming and having aspirations of becoming like successful and everything, sometimes you stop thinking about yourself or your body or your like physical state or everything. You talked about meditation, or you talked about like the back problems right now.
Yeah.
So it seems like now it's like you taking this into account. Is it something that you took into account recently, or is it something that's always been there and you've always been balancing it?
That's a great question. I think it's a bit more recent. I think well, definitely. So this car accident sucked, and it really changed things up for me. Again, could have been so much worse, but it was like, yeah, it fucked up my spine a little bit. And and that's meant years of physical therapy, of stretching, of like not being able to lift certain things. And there's good days and bad days, but I always felt kind of out of touch with my body, before that happened. I'm heady, I'm always thinking. It's easier for me to be in my head than in my body. And I actually think it's the silver lining of that accident is that I'm more in touch with my body than I used to be. If I go on stage, I can be like, okay, I feel I'm anxious and it's happening right here in my upper stomach, and I'm feeling like this tension in my neck and it's here. And then when you have that, you can be like, okay, what do I need to do to fix this? Sometimes it's, taking something from my stomach. Sometimes it's just stretching. Sometimes it's just noticing it so that I can identify it and it doesn't kind of take up my whole existence. It's funny, I wonder if in 10 years I'm going to think this version of me, 30-year-old Noah, is corny. But it's such a... it feels like such a 30-year-old thing to go like, okay, I actually don't really care if I'm famous or rich. I just want to be like happy and comfortable. And that means making sure that my body's happy. That means making sure that I'm enjoying myself as much as possible. And that means taking steps to make sure that if and when I do get to travel to all these places that I'd like to travel to, that I'm really awake for it, really present. That I'm not creating a life where I'm constantly somewhere else and I'm constantly stressed and thinking about other stuff. So, so that's, I don't know, that's a constant process for me.
That's super cool because we went on like the big like prospects and goals and everything. What would you say on a more like short term? What is next for you?
I have sort of a solo project that I've been working on forever. Well, kind of a couple. I'd really like to stop bullshitting and put some of those out. I've been working on them for so long, and I say yes to everything, that people ask me to do, and then I put my own thing off. So I'm really pushing myself this year to make some progress, releasing some of my own music, maybe in a way that's a little less structured and less with lower pressure than Psymon Spine, something that is just that I'm just releasing for me, just for fun. I'd like to make the music part a little bit more fun, or have an outlet that's where there's a little less pressure attached to it, where I can be a little less precious with it. So that's a big goal. I really want to tour some of those places that I mentioned. That's like a thing that I feel that I could make happen in the next couple years.
What would be the first place, the first country you would like to go, if you could?
Oh, it's cliche, but I really want to go to Japan. I've never been. One of my best friends, Takuya Nakamura, he's an amazing DJ and jazz musician who goes in between Tokyo and the U.S. Had a huge influence on my music in New York because he spends about half of his time here, if not more. And he has this house about 2 hours outside Tokyo in Nagano. And he's always said, come up, we'll stay at the house. He calls it Deer Trap Studios. We'll stay at the house and we'll, write some music together. So I'd really like to go do that.
I hope you get to make it soon.
I hope so too. I'd love to go to Korea. I'd love to go to China. I just produced a record for a singer from Shanghai called Diner. Michael and I produced it together. She's incredible. Highly recommend people keep an ear out for her album because it's beautiful. So I'd love to go visit her in Shanghai. I just did some artwork for a club in Seoul, South Korea, Modeki. I'd love to go check that club out. Yeah, that's top on my list right now.
And do you do the artwork for the Psymon Spine projects and your own like solo projects yourself, or?
We have a pretty strict no band members making art for Psymon Spine rule. There have been minor exceptions. I made a poster recently because they had already asked me to make the flyer before we knew we were going to play, you know. But Peter, my bandmate, is also a visual artist. We early on decided we have so much to argue about just within the realm of music. We cannot be also arguing about the art because we will never get anything done. So we have and we have this amazing artist, Andrew Boudreau, who goes by Bucky Boudreau, as that's his music alter ego. He's incredible. So we have this one guy who basically does all of our artwork, all of our merch, all of our album art, with the exception being the album Charismatic Megafauna. And before that, we've worked with other people. Megan Armstrong did the album art for that. But yeah, since from that point on, our friend Bucky or Andrew has done most of the artwork, and we're thrilled to get to work with him. He's so talented.
Thank you so much, Noah. It was a pleasure to welcome you. This was the Indie Pulse. We're here at Baker Falls in New York City, and it was a pleasure to receive Noah Prebish. Make sure to tune in and keep on watching the other episodes. See you.